Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about relationships in the context of disability, which objectively is probably something that I'm not incredibly qualified to talk about. Um, Now, I have a disability, but I've never been married. Maybe, I'm not actually the most qualified person to talk about this. However, what I'm going to say is that I think the reason for the fact that I'm, never been married is that um, doesn't really have that much to do necessarily with having a disability. I think partly it just has to do with, my own personality. Let me explain that. So, among other members of the muscular dystrophy patient community, there are other people who have never been married. There are a number of people who, are married or have been married and, or, have families and children. Um, so it's not really a deterministic thing to say that, oh, you have a disability, no one will want to be in a relationship with you. Because objectively, um, there's a number of counterexamples, of people whom I know personally, that completely disprove that. Now, there was, I want to say a couple months ago, a, somewhat infamous Dr. Phil episode, which was, talked about in the disability community on Facebook, in which there was this couple, one of the two people, I think the woman had a disability, and they were just sort of having problems. And then Dr. Phil said, "Well, you see, I've seen it 100 times if I've seen it once. You can't be someone's lover and their caretaker. That just doesn't work. It never works. I've seen it so many times." Um, However, what I will say is that, I've seen a number of counterexamples of people who, of couples, in whom one person has a disability, one person doesn't, and the spouse without a disability is, the caretaker in some sense of the person who does have a disability. Um, so Now maybe this was deliberate on the show's part, but um, maybe this was just a couple who was having issues. I mean, when disability is involved, that doesn't really change the dynamic. It does certainly, and I acknowledge this, have add an additional level of complication. However, you know, couples of any variety can be having problems. Um, Period. I mean, that's just the way that life is. So, I guess that, what I would say is that, it's, kind of like the presentation I did on mental health a couple weeks ago, that when disability is, involved in a relationship, it's not necessarily a showstopper, depending on what the people involved, think and their attitudes. Definitely some people are, more open-minded in this area than others. And, for some people that may be a showstopper, but not for everybody. Because I've seen far too many counterexamples where you know things work. So what I would say is that um, it's an additional level of complication, but it's not necessarily a showstopper. And I think really my own experience has to do more with just me. I tend to be a somewhat um, difficult person to get to know well, and I'm not that you know outgoing and open to meeting new people. So in some sense, YouTube is kind of my substitute for going out and meeting people in real life. But uh, that doesn't necessarily correlate with disability or personality type. So what I would say is, it's kind of a multifaceted thing. I know a number of people who were in, good and happy and successful relationships, who have disabilities. Um, you know, it's like everything else in life, it largely just depends on the person. So anyway, I hope you're having a good week, and I will talk to you soon.